Have you ever looked at a headline, one claiming some massive historic deal, and immediately wondered, okay, what's the catch? What's really going on here?
It happens all the time, doesn't it?
It does. So cast your mind back with us to the summer of 2025, July. We get this huge announcement, what was instantly called the biggest trade deal in American history between the U.S. and Japan.
Oh, yeah. The mood was triumphant. Huge promises. Investment, reindustrialization, a real show of American economic strength.
Absolutely. And the headline figures seemed massive. They talked about, an initial $50 million in direct investment?
That was the immediate number thrown out, yes. $50 million direct, plus a big cut in U.S. tariffs on Japanese goods, dropping from, I think, 27.5% way down to 15%.
Significant drop.
Definitely. And the clear expectation, the way it was sold, was that the U.S. gets the lion's share, like over 90% of the economic benefit.
With the president directing where all that money goes, right? Into things like shipbuilding, LNG, semiconductors.
Critical infrastructure, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the plan presented.
Okay, but here's where we need to pause and get something really clear for you. That $50 million, that was just this sort of upfront announcement.
The tip of the iceberg, really.
Exactly. The real fight, the political battleground, was over this much larger, comprehensive investment framework.
We're talking a framework valued at a potential, what was it, $550 billion?
A stunning $550 billion. That's billion with a B, potential future commitments, state-backed loans.
Yeah.
This was the money meant to actually reindustrialize America, according to the plan.
Right. And that massive number, the $550 billion, that's the scale of commitment Japan was really pressured into making.
So what we want to do here is trace how this deal, which looked totally locked in, just started to fall apart within weeks.
Yeah, how it went from this supposed triumph of alliance to what some called a silent revolt by Japan.
And how Japan's new leadership started pushing hard for fiscal sovereignty, really changing the economic game in Asia.
It's a fascinating shift, challenging decades of U.S. economic dominance in the region.
So initially, the U.S. perspective was pretty straightforward. This is great. American jobs, proof that America first works, and Japan pays for it. Simple.
Seemed simple, but the moment the ink was dry, metaphorically speaking, things got very messy back in Tokyo.
The domestic reaction was explosive.
Immediate and, frankly, disastrous for the prime minister at the time, Shigeru Ishiba. He'd basically signed under duress, facing those U.S. tariff threats.
And his approval ratings just tanked.
Plummeted, below 20%. The big accusation was that he was, and this is the phrase they used, hypothecating fiscal sovereignty.
Okay, hypothecating fiscal sovereignty. Sounds intense. Break that down for us. Does that just mean mortgaging Japan's economic future?
That's pretty much it, yeah. Committing future government money, future policy decisions, possibly messing up their own domestic investment plans, all just to get short-term relief from U.S. tariffs, relief that mainly helped the U.S.
So he was seen as selling out Japan's control over its own finances.
Precisely. And the political pressure was just too much. Ishiba resigned in September.
Which opened the door for someone very different. October 4th, Sanae Takaichi is sworn in. Japan's first female leader.
And she comes with a reputation, right? Very conservative, deeply committed to national sovereignty.
Absolutely. And her very first statement, a direct signal to Washington, she said something like, any commitment that undermines national interests will be reviewed exhaustively.
That wasn't subtle. That exhaustive review was basically the first shot fired in this quiet resistance. It's signaled the old days of just going along with U.S. economic demands were over.
And the markets felt this shift too, didn't they? Wall Street wasn't entirely convinced from the start.
No, there was skepticism. Some analysts saw it as maybe just election year marketing from the U.S. side. Others thought it was a slightly desperate move to keep influence against China.
And the Nikkei index.
It reacted.
Oh, big time. It jumped about 3% right after the announcement on the tariff relief news. But then, wham, sharp drop.
Why the drop? Because the details started leaking out. Analysts dug in and realized most of that huge $550 billion wasn't actually, fresh private investment. It was mostly these complex state-guaranteed loans.
So basically, Japan's government forcing its own capital out of the country dressed up as investment.
Kind of, yeah. Mandated capital outflow. That spooked the markets.
Okay, let's really unpack this resistance, because this is where it gets fascinating. Again, the technical details. Washington thought they had full control, right?
Absolutely. The assumption was framework signed, money flows, U.S. president decides where it goes. End of story.
But that assumption, That was the weak point.
That's exactly what Japan targeted. The new negotiator, Ryosei Kazagawa, he delivered the killer blow, technically speaking.
What did he say?
He stated quite clearly that Washington would not have exclusive control over how that $550 billion framework was spent.
Whoa. So who would?
The Bank of Cooperation International of Japan, it's a state-owned bank, they would keep the power to actually select and approve the projects.
Okay, hold on. That's huge. That's not a minor detail.
Not at all. It's pure political defiance dressed up as bureaucratic procedure. It means Tokyo gets the final say, the veto over where its money goes, not the White House.
So they essentially built a control mechanism after the deal was announced.
Exactly. They set up a specific state body just to manage these funds, ensuring everything stayed aligned with Japan's own long-term goals, not just America's.
The Financial Times calling it a silent revolt really nails it then. No shouting, just technical maneuvering.
Quiet, effective defiance through contractual interpretation and implementation. Very Japanese, some might say.
And it sounds like Japan wasn't alone in feeling this kind of pressure. This U.S. tactic of linking tariff threats to huge investment demands. Did it hit South Korea too?
It did, yes. And that context is important. It shows Japan wasn't acting in isolation. South Korea was facing a similar situation, a proposed, $350 billion framework tied to tariff relief.
And how they react.
Their national security advisor actually went public saying, basically, we can't just write a check for $350 billion.
So a clear signal from both Seoul and Tokyo.
A very clear signal. The message was, the old playbook where Washington dictates economic terms to its Asian allies, that wasn't working anymore. Asia was drawing lines.
Now, you can bet China was watching all of this very closely.
Oh, absolutely. Beijing was observing this U.S.-Japan friction with great interest. They put out one of those typically ambiguous statements.
What did it say? Something about mutual respect.
Yeah, basically that economic relations require mutual respect, not coercion. A veiled jab at the U.S. tactics, obviously.
But China did more than just talk, right? It made concrete offers to Tokyo.
They did. Tactically quite smart. Beijing offered Japan an expanded currency swap line, and they also offered inclusion in new infrastructure projects under the AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank.
Okay, let's connect the dots there. Why is a currency swap line important in this specific fight?
Good question. Because the U.S. deal was forcing Japan to commit huge amounts of capital, likely dollar-denominated, right? A swap line with China gives Tokyo another way to access liquidity, potentially yuan or even dollars indirectly, without having to rely solely on U.S. markets or deplete its own reserves under pressure.
So it's a tool for financial stability, way to resist the dollar pressure from the U.S. deal.
Exactly. It offers an alternative, a bit of financial breathing room. It directly counters the coercive element of the American approach.
Meanwhile, back in Washington, they must have been getting pretty frustrated.
You could feel the frustration. Their response was to try and reassert control. They launched something called the Investment Accelerator.
Another new initiative. What was that supposed to do?
It was basically a new federal office designed to quickly channel all this promised allied capital into those strategic U.S. projects, the Alaskan LNG, the semiconductor plants in the Midwest.
Streamline the process.
Yeah, but streamline it entirely on U.S. terms. Speed and control were the priorities, not cooperation.
How so? What was the catch for allies like Japan?
Well, foreign governments were given just 45 days for consultation on which projects got funded. And this is the crucial part. They got no voting power.
No vote. So consultation meant they could offer opinions, but Washington still decided everything.
Pretty much. It was about deploying allied money fast into U.S. priorities with minimal outside interference.
And Japan's reaction was predictable, I guess.
Completely unacceptable for them. And Kazagawa, the negotiator, added another layer of technical resistance. He said Japan's contribution would be made without impact on the exchange rate.
Okay, that sounds technical again. Without impact on the exchange rate. What does that really mean in practice?
It's powerful code. It means Tokyo reserves the right to control the pace and timing of the money flow. They could use things like escrow accounts or just release funds incredibly slowly in small bits.
To avoid destabilizing the yen.
Exactly. And the effect is they can slow the whole $550 billion process down to a crawl, or even paralyze it if they don't like the projects Washington picks or the terms offered. It keeps control firmly in Tokyo's hands.
This whole standoff really feels like it's about a fundamental shift in Japan's strategy. Let's talk about Prime Minister Takaichi's idea. Strategic equilibrium. What's that about for the U.S.-Japan relationship going forward?
It's a really significant doctrine. Essentially, it means decoupling defense cooperation from economic subordination.
So Japan still wants U.S. defense ties.
Yes, definitely. They see the U.S. security umbrella as vital, especially with regional threats. But on the economic front, they want independence, equality, mutual benefit, not just following U.S. demands anymore.
And Takaichi herself, she admires Margaret Thatcher, right? Pushing for a stronger Japan.
She does. She's driving Japan towards, more military capability, but she's explicitly linking that to achieving genuine economic parity with the U.S. The two go hand in hand for her.
And when you look at the money involved, you see why they're digging their heels in. That $550 billion framework, you said it's like 14% of Japan's GDP for 2024.
A colossal amount, 14%. U.S. analysts were dreaming of 700,000 American jobs, re-industrialization, all funded by Japan, basically no cost to the U.S. taxpayer.
Sounds great if you're in the U.S. But what did economists in Japan think?
They were horrified. Many saw it as a potential fiscal nightmare. They worried that forcing so much capital out of the country could destabilize Japanese government bonds, which is a huge deal for them, and also starve domestic investment, which Japan desperately needs after years of stagnation.
So clash between U.S. projections and Japanese economic reality.
A huge clash. And it wasn't just economists. The business community was sounding the alarm, too.
Like the CEO of Santori.
Yeah, Santori, the huge conglomerate. Their CEO publicly called the whole deal, especially the lack of transparency around the tariff exemption part, a serious strategic error. That's strong language.
It signals the resistance wasn't just political posturing. It was based on real economic fears.
Deep skepticism about the benefits for Japan and the potential costs.
And we started seeing actual projects, big ones, begin to wobble because of this.
Absolutely. That $44 billion Alaskan LNG terminal is a prime example. It was heavily promoted by the U.S. side.
But the Japanese buyers weren't convinced.
The Japanese utility companies, the ones who were supposed to buy all that LNG, started expressing serious doubts. Was it actually profitable long-term? Was it strategically necessary for them?
Or was it just something they were being pushed into for political reasons?
That seemed to be their feeling, that it served a U.S. political goal more than a Japanese commercial or energy security need.
So this really brings up a critical question, doesn't it? If the main U.S. leverage is tariff threats and forcing allies to fund U.S. projects, is that sustainable? Is it actually pushing allies away?
That's the heart of the dilemma, I think. The Wall Street Journal piece you mentioned earlier put it starkly. China comes offering soft loans, infrastructure deals. The U.S. comes offering tariff pain unless you invest in their priorities.
It's a very different approach.
Completely different.
Yeah.
And interestingly, even U.S. industrials started getting nervous. They were lobbying Washington, saying essentially, look, we need investment and trade, not a new Cold War with Japan, our best customer.
They saw the risk of blowing up the whole economic relationship.
They feared a trade war would hurt them more than these forced investments would help.
So all this tension builds up to the summit meeting in late October, October 28th.
Right. The leaders met. They tried to put a good face on things, naturally.
Signed some smaller agreements.
Yeah, there were deals on things like cooperation on nuclear reactors, some agreements on rare earth minerals, things that were less controversial.
But the main event, the $550 billion investment framework.
Still unresolved. Strategically kicked down the road. Reports suggested only about 20 companies had shown even preliminary, non-binding interest, a tiny fraction of what was needed.
So what does this all really mean looking forward?
I think the crucial takeaway is that this isn't just about one bad negotiation. It's part of a much bigger picture.
The shift to a multipolar world.
Exactly. Countries, especially major economies in Asia, like Japan, are demanding more autonomy. They're pushing back against the old hierarchies. Japan, especially with its aging population, its stagnant economy, it just can't afford these huge financial commitments that primarily benefit the U.S. anymore.
Takaichi's Anonomics. It's about Japan first, in a way. Symmetry, not subordination.
That's the core idea. Symmetry, mutual respect, national benefit. It's a rejection of the past model.
And Japan seems to have played this really cleverly, using bureaucratic delay and technicalities.
Masterfully, some might say. Passive resistance. Those Nomura analysts estimated Tokyo could probably drag out the payments on that $550 billion framework for like a decade.
Without technically breaking the deal.
Without technically violating the vague political promises made initially. Strategic delay.
So here's the final thought for you to chew on. If Japan pulls this off, If they successfully slow-walk this massive commitment, resist U.S. pressure using these bureaucratic tools, and manage to avoid major sanctions or a full-blown trade war.
What does that signal to other allies?
Exactly. Could this embolden other key U.S. partners, maybe Australia, maybe Canada, to say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we should renegotiate our economic deals too?
Could we be seeing the start of a fundamental shift in how the U.S. has to manage its core alliances, moving away from coercion towards genuine partnership?
It certainly feels like the ground is shifting under our feet right now. A space definitely worth watching.